Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you had a pleasant weekend. Welcome back to another episode of the Monday Talks. And this Monday, we're going back into the history by mail. It is back on schedule. I know it came very late in January, so late to the point that it actually was in February. So we're going to be getting two history by mails in the month of February, and I can't wait for it. So, if I remember correctly, and I should because I only filmed the thing like 2 weeks ago, the first unit, because they do 3-4 month long little units, is Native Americans, if I remember correctly from the last time. And now I'm really trying to. Oh, it was the that court case that I'd never actually heard of. But now we go. All right. So we've got handwriting from the Department of the Interior, Office of Indian Affairs, March 13th, 1860. At 62? That's a fascinating. Sir, respectfully ask for your attention to the condition of the Southern Indians now in Kansas. Oh, wait, here's the transcript. There's the transcript. But whoever wrote that, some very, very, very good penmanship. Let's see if we can catch a signature. There's a signature, but I'm not sure. It's something Commissioner. Very respectfully, your obedient servant. All right. Now here we go. Transcript of the letter from U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs, March 13th, 1862. Department of the Interior, Office of Indian Affairs, March 13th, blah, blah, blah. Sir, I respectfully ask your attention to the condition of the Southern Indians now in Kansas, who have been driven from their homes by the disloyal Indians and by an insurrectionary force from Texas and Arkansas. There are now some 8,000 of them in Kansas in a condition of extreme destitution. Upon the authority of a recent act of Congress, I have authorized the superintendent to expend the annuities due to those tribes to provide the means to relieve their immediate and pressing wants. This source of relief will however soon be exhausted, and unless other means should be provided to subsist them, many of them must perish. These Indians are partially civilized and have for many years been engaged in agricultural labor to great advantage. If they shall be returned to their own homes and protected by an adequate force while engaged in cultivating their lands, they can raise the means of their subsistence and relieve the government from the necessity of making very large expenditures for them. Unless they should be returned to their homes very soon, it will be too late to raise crops the present year, and the government will be under the necessity of subsidizing them, of subsisting them during the whole year. This, it is estimated, will cost nearly $500,000 of dollars. Okay, I didn't read that wrong. It was just written in a way I didn't understand. Upon a full consideration of the whole subject, I am fully satisfied that humanity, as well as regard for economy, requires they should be returned to their homes and protected by a sufficient force while planting and raising their crops. 2 regiments of volunteers with the aid of a portion of loyal Indians would constitute a force sufficient for this purpose. I therefore recommend that you will procure an order from the War Department detailing 2 regiments of volunteers from Kansas to go with the Indians to their homes and to remain there for their protection as long as may be necessary. Also to furnish 2,000 stand of arms and ammunition to be placed in the hands of the loyal Indians. The Indians who may be armed shall be subsisted as part of the military force while they shall be in the service. Honorable C.B. Smith, Secretary of the Interior. Very respectfully, your obedient servant, William P. Dole, Commissioner. All right, that was interesting. Now let us see what this was all about. All right. Letter from the U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs to the Secretary of the Interior, March 13th. Okay, so enclosed is a letter from William P. Dole, the U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs, to Secretary of the Interior Caleb Smith, who was responsible for managing federal land. Commissioner Dole describes a group of Creek Native Americans who were loyal to the Union during the Civil War and had been forced from their lands by Confederate troops and other Creeks that were allied with the Confederacy. Dole requests resources to support the refugee Creeks. the Native American tribes in the Civil War. More than 20,000 Native Americans fought in Civil War battles as individual soldiers, in bands, tribes, or as whole nations. Many Native Americans thought by fighting in the war they could end discrimination and gain favor with the prevailing side and eventually maintain their lands and rights. Some tribes switched alliances during the war, while other tribes split their alliances. The majority of Native Americans sided with the Confederacy since they viewed the Union's support for a strong central federal system as a threat to their tribal sovereignty. Additionally, some members of various tribes, such as the Creek and Choctaw tribes, were slaveholders. I actually did not know that. At the beginning of the war, the Confederacy established a Bureau of Indian Affairs which negotiated treaties with several tribes such as the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Catawba, and Creek. These tribes were promised supplies, protection, and delegates to the Confederate Congress in exchange for providing soldiers for the Confederate Army. Similar agencies had existed in the U.S. government since 1775. Until the mid-20th century, the word colored referred to both African Americans and Native Americans. So during the Civil War, Native American troops served in colored units. A few Native Americans reached high military rank during the war. Sorry if I mispronounce this. Stan Watee, for example, was a Cherokee leader who reached the rank of general in the Confederate Army and was the last Confederate leader in the Civil War to surrender. This is all things I did not know. However, Native American troops suffered heavy casualties, and the Cherokee Nation suffered a population decline of roughly 30% by the end of the Civil War. The Creek Native Americans. The Creek Nation was originally located in the southeast United States. Upper Creeks or Muskogees lived in the flatlands of what is now Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. Lower Creeks lived in southwest Georgia and spoke a slightly different dialect. Women farmed maize, beans, and squash, while the men hunted and defended the land. Creek society was matrilineal, with women as the heads of households, owning the houses and land. Houses were scattered for miles around the center of a square town, which was usually near a stream or river. All right. In 1813 to 1814, Creek factions fought the Creek War, or the Red Stick War, in the Gulf Coast of America as part of the conflict of the War of 1812. What began as local conflict within the Creek Confederation eventually progressed when local American militias took sides. The Red Sticks were those who supported the tradition and opposed assimilation into European and American cultures. They fought with wooden war clubs painted red with a piece of bone, iron, or steel protruding from one end. British and Spanish forces armed the Creek Red Sticks since they shared a common interest in preventing U.S. expansion into other areas. The U.S. sided with the Choctaw and Cherokee nations as well as the remaining Creeks to quash the rebellion. The war finally ended with General Andrew Jackson forcing the Creeks to surrender more than 21 million acres of today's Georgia and Alabama. Creeks on this land were forcibly removed to Indian Territory, a large area of land that had been set aside by the federal government for Native Americans who were forced to relocate from their tribal lands in the eastern United States. Indian Territory was made up of an area that today comprises 9 states. Refugee Creeks in the Indian Territory shared land and government with the Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole tribes. Creeks during the Civil War. During the Civil War, Creek chief Apathiahola and his followers chose to remain loyal to the Union. Even though the Union had passed Indian removal legislation in prior decades, he felt the removal legislation was passed due to pressure from southern states, particularly Georgia. Some Creek descendants of mixed Creek and African slave ancestry supported the Union since they resented discriminatory black code laws enforced by the Confederacy. In contrast, other groups of Creeks held slaves, produced cotton, and supported the Confederacy. Lower Creeks, for example, were led by Chief McIntosh, who was appointed a colonel in the Confederate Army. President Abraham Lincoln received a request for assistance from Creek chiefs Upathelihalla, I really don't know, and Miko Hutko, dated August 15th, 1861. Three weeks later, the chiefs received a response from Lincoln confirming the Creeks would receive asylum and aid if they moved to the newly built Fort Row in Kansas. At the outbreak of the Civil War, both the Union and Confederacy vied for control of the Indian Territory. Old tribal rivalries were renewed as tribes allied with either side. On November 15, 1861, Colonel Douglas Cooper led 1,400 troops, including Native Americans loyal to the Confederacy, against the Union-allied Creek natives who were led by 83-year-old Creek chief Upathelihalla. It's the O and the A. I'm just messing up. And his nearly 9,000 Creek supporters. He was also joined by approximately 2,600 Seminole, Delaware, and Cherokee natives. He fled with his supporters from McIntosh County, Oklahoma, toward Union lines in Kansas, as directed by Lincoln. Along the way, they fought three battles: Round Mountain, Talassa. See, this is the stuff I never learned about in school. And Chustanala. The march to Fort Row included including the battles along the way, and the hard 1861-62 winter became known as the Trail of Blood and Ice, with nearly 2,000 casualties among the roughly 9,000 fleeing Union-allied natives. Some of the survivors settled in eastern Kansas and formed the 1st Indian Home Guard. Once at Fort Row, the remaining Native American refugees discovered the fort lacked adequate supplies, especially medical care for frostbite. They moved to Fort Belmont, but also found poor conditions. In the enclosed letter, which is what we got, U.S. Commissioner of Indian Affairs William P. Dole requests 2 regiments of volunteers and ammunition to help protect the refugee Creeks. This protection, Dole argues, will allow the Creeks to plant their own crops, saving the federal government the cost of supporting the refugees throughout the year. Upathelihalla died in the Creek refugee camp in March 1863 and was buried beside his daughter, who died during the previous year's harsh winter. After the war, the Union negotiated new peace treaties with the various Native American tribes. The Treaty of 1866 required the Creeks to abolish slavery within their territory and grant tribal citizenship to the freed slaves who chose to stay in the Indian Territory, including voting rights in tribal affairs and shares of land and finances. Freed slaves who chose to leave the Indian Territory were granted U.S. citizenship. In 1866, the Creeks established a government in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, where the nation is still headquartered. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. The second in the Native American series. There's the link. That was a truly fascinating one. Because again, throughout all the history classes I took in high school and college, never really talked about the Native American troops in the Civil War, and that's something I'm a little unfamiliar with, and now this has lit the fire to drastically change that. And that's why I love this, because every month it gives me some new little kind of tidbit of history to latch on to. So that is going to be fun. This was a very, very fascinating history by mail in a rather bleak part of American history, but again, I will still maintain history must be learned. We have to know it. We just have to. So that is going to do it for this Monday Talks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I always enjoy it when we get to talk some history. Have a good rest of your week, and we will see you tomorrow.